And all of a sudden, he just starts chomping on anything and everything within eyesight like a bulldog, including my hand, the syringe, the glass cartridge, everything.
Can you say, "Talk to me"?
Talk to me. All right, so my name is David Ryan, and I'm a dentist, managing partner of a dental company, father of 4. I've been a dentist for a little over 10 and a half years.
Okay. And what was it that made you want to become a dentist or pursue a career in dentistry?
So the thing that made me want to become a dentist didn't happen until later in life. I always wanted to do something in the medical field. My grandpa was a family doctor, so I kind of grew up familiar with the medical field and really wanted to do something within that, helping people. But I never would have wanted to be a dentist when I was younger. Hated going to the dentist. Terrible experiences. If you'd asked me this question back then, I would have laughed in your face type of scenario. Spent a lot of time shadowing different doctors, wanted to do like orthopedic surgery. And so I spent a lot of time shadowing them and watching surgeries. Like my mom and my sister dislocated their shoulders, got to see their surgeries. Spent a lot of time with those doctors, went on a mission, lived in Paraguay for a few years, came back, went back to those same doctors, and they're like, "Don't do it the way that the medical field's going. Like, we don't have any say in what we're doing, don't do it." And I was like, whoa, what am I going to do? So I started branching out and kind of looking at, all right, what else can I do with, that's similar and takes to the aspects of the medical field that I really like and then adds to it. And had a friend that was a dentist, watched a lot of stuff and was doing some similar types of things with implants and bone grafting. And I was like, oh, it's great. And so I kind of went down that road, just knowing that it was going to kind of provide me more the lifestyle and family life that I wanted versus being on call all the time and working in a hospital scenario, whatever it is. Okay, so the steps that I took to become a dentist started, after you finish undergrad, then you go to dental school for another 4 years. And so between that time, you have to take a dental admission test and do a bunch of prerequisite classes that the dental schools require in order for you to be accepted. So did all that stuff, applied, went and did interviews everywhere, and then kind of figured out where I wanted to go and ended up going in Arizona where I grew up. So it worked out perfect as far as that was concerned.
You said you went to Arizona. So where did you go to school?
So I went to school at Midwestern University in Glendale, Arizona, and I was part of the first graduating class from that school. So it was a brand new school, and so there were some unknown factors in that, and so there was a little bit of a risk, endeavoring on something like that, but actually came out way, farther ahead because of that, because we got a lot more clinical experience there than I would have anywhere else. And because we were the first graduating class, I knew all the faculty. We were on, first name basis. They knew all my family, my kids' names. And so it was just super helpful moving forward, even after graduating as well.
Now, I understand that you also were in the military and worked as a dentist in the military. Can you tell me about that process and how that, what exactly you did and how that might have differed from just going a civilian route?
Yeah, so I did spend time in the military, about 10 years. The process with that, military, once you join, they own you and you do what they tell you to do. And so I did a lot of different things for them in the meantime until I got to the point where I actually became a dentist. But it was a great avenue to kind of accelerate my timeline on that and not have to go into as much debt as well. And so it worked out really well for me. And then once I graduated, then I became a dentist for them, and it became a lot better because then I didn't have to deal with as much of the garbage that you have to deal with all the time in the military.
What deal did you have to make with them to do that? Like, what were the specifics?
Oh, I sold my soul.
Well, naturally.
That's inherent in the military.
Yeah, but so what was the deal? So I looked into doing JAG, and it was some deal where okay, they'll law school is 3 years, and so it's you'd have to do
like a year for a year.
Yeah, so you'd have to do your first year, and then after that you could apply, and then they would pay for retroactively your first year, and then your other 2 years. But then for every year that they paid for, it would be 4 years in the service or something like that. So what was the medical deal?
And a lot of that depends on what's going on in the world at the time that you join the military, right? What are their needs? If they need a bunch of people and they're super hard pressed, they're going to offer you a better deal than when they're cutting back military. It's like, okay, you're going to get the crap, opportunities type of thing. Fortunately, I was at the very end of where they were really heavily recruiting, to the point where actually one of my good friends signed and joined the Army a week after I did, and they called him back 3 days later and said, we don't have the funding for you, you're out. Wow. And so for him, he has a great, personality where he's like, it's probably for the better. But I mean, that's kind of just to see the differences there of like, okay, yeah, like they're willing to spend a bunch of money, and then like, oh no, we don't have any more money. So it worked out perfect for me, as far as just kind of getting in with that, right in that timeline. Because for me, it was kind of like, once I graduated, it was like a year for year type of thing. So I had a minimum of like 6 years or whatever, total time with them that I had to do. And then after that, I can continue on, and they would, every year that I worked, they would help pay off more towards my student loans, that type of scenario. I mean, there's hiccups along the way. Like, we were talking about yesterday where they were behind on their payments like 4 years on my student loans, right? Which isn't great, but in the end, we got it all worked out, and it was just a good way to get through it and have great medical insurance with my family in the meantime, and just have a different aspect of life that just kind of adds to the fun and chaos, I guess.
So do you think you would recommend that route to other people?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think you want to talk to people that have gone through it and really see like, okay, what are you joining for? What are the reasons you want to get out of it? And are you going to get that out? Or is it like the romanticized things that they're feeding you that you think you're going to get out, that there's no way you're ever going to get that out, right? So I think you got to go in with eyes wide open, which I think I did pretty good. And once it got to the point where I was like, you know what, I've got out what I wanted, and I'm not really getting anything that I want at this point from them anymore, it was a good time to leave.
So a good business decision.
Yeah.
You had to analyze the pros and cons.
Yeah, I mean, it was like, okay, there's different ways that I can try to soften the blow of these massive student loans, and, military is not a bad route to do it, especially if you're, someone that grows up with kind of that in your family, and, you have that little inkling in the back of your head, like, hey, yeah, you've always kind of wanted to do something like this, and you like those types of things, and you're willing to put up with a lot of garbage to get through. If you're willing to work hard and put up with stuff that most people don't want to, then it'll work out.
So if you could go back to high school, knowing what you know now, what would you have done different?
Well, I would have invested in a ton of stuff back then.
Well, I
know.
Specifically to...
No, so I mean, back in high school, I spent a lot of my time, I was heavily academic, and so I was really pushing myself and trying to, I feel like I did it right during that time period, and got scholarships that I needed to help pay for schooling so I could just keep pushing myself to higher education. Just knowing that, the more knowledge that I had that other people didn't, I was more marketable, and it was going to be easier for me in my life to do the things I wanted to do and support a family, and not have to kind of go through some of the stuff that my family did growing up, just with being dependent on how the market's going at the time or whatever it is. And so I would still do, I think I would still do it the same way, honestly. Once you get through it, you see the good and the bad, but for better or worse, I'm kind of more the personality, like I'm going to take it as it comes and make the most out of it and just move on. And if something happens that I was like, I wish that really didn't happen, but in the end, it made me who I am, and I'm just going to keep going. So,
nice. Now I know times change, so that was going back to high school. What if you had to start right now, or let's say you were a kid coming out of high school right now? Is there anything you would do differently? Would you do the military route again? Would you do civilian, or are there other opportunities?
Yeah, so I mean, if you're going back and trying to look, okay, what would I do differently? Had I not really gotten in when I did in the military and gotten kind of the deal that I had set up, I would say no, I wouldn't have done that. If I went back and got the same deal again, and I was in the same scenario, like where I was right at the point where like, hey, we're getting ready to have our first kid, and we're planning on having multiple kids over the next little while, and I know I'm going to get $500,000 in debt going to school, I would still do it the same way. When you're getting into that scenario, you have different avenues to kind of soften the blow. You can either just take out all the loans straight away and just be like, hey, I'm going to be paying these off forever, or you can join military, or you can do like Indian Health Services, where you basically work on the res, and after however many years they're going to pay off your loans type of scenario. And they all have pros and cons, and so you just kind of weigh all of them. Once I graduated, I got into a really great job with a great company, and right off the bat was doing really well to where I was locked into with the military when I really didn't need to be financially at that point. I could have easily walked away financially, but there was a lot of stuff that I really enjoyed, and I still had some time commitment with them. And even after I finished the time commitment, I stayed in longer to do some of the other stuff I wanted to do. So yeah, I think I would do it pretty similarly. I think for me it was better doing that, and then eventually I could switch to where I'm doing reserves too, so I'm working in the private sector and military and kind of hitting both avenues.
So working as a dentist in the military, what was that like?
Yeah, so working in the military as a dentist is extremely different from the civilian side. So in the military, whatever it is, you really, there's a lot of stuff you don't have to worry about. You don't have to worry about all your patients are members of the military. And so they have to do what they have to do regardless. It's like they have to come to you, and if they need something done, they have to get it done. You don't have to worry about, trying to market to different people or advertise and all this stuff, and you don't have to worry about getting sued and all these things that in the civilian side you do. But at the same time, you're still part of the military. You still have to do everything that whoever's above you is, making you do and having to do. So that can go really good if you have a great, your leadership is fantastic, which the majority of the time it's not, and it can go super poorly when it's not. And so once you're a dentist and you're an officer, you're in that scenario where you can either take that and say, okay, I'm going to, continue on with that traditional military style, or what I did is I tried to be like, hey, I'm going to try to be the buffer for the guys that keep getting the crap and try to soften the blow for them, because for me, this isn't a career thing, right? Like I'm in here for a specific purpose, and I'm just trying to make it easier and better on everyone while I'm there. I'm going to make the most out of it while I'm there, because at the end of the day, I could walk away, whereas a lot of these other guys can't. And so it was interesting in that regard of having to all of a sudden feel like you have to take in people and take them under your wing and be like, hey, stop messing with these guys when, this is just ridiculous. There's no need for this. And then other aspects of it where it's like, on the civilian side as a dentist, I can do whatever I want when I want. Any procedures that come in, I can do them, and it's great, no big deal. In the military, it's like, nope, we'll only let you do these procedures. You can't do those. These we're going to outsource to a civilian contractor. And so sometimes, depending on the job or where you're at, what station you're at and all this stuff, it's like, yeah, you're doing a ton of stuff and it's fun and you're getting all this work experience. Whereas others, it's like, you're just sitting there diagnosing stuff and that's it. It's the most boring thing in the entire world. You're like, yeah, you need all this stuff and it'd be, I can easily do it, but they won't let me. So you're going to go down the street.
So what is your day-to-day life as a dentist outside the military?
So my day-to-day life as a dentist outside the military, that's kind of, there's two different ways to answer that. So I'll answer first as just as a normal dentist, because that's what I did for a long time. Now I'm kind of in a different role. But as a regular dentist, day-to-day life, you're working like a 9-to-5 job type of thing, right? Or whatever it is. I mean, as a dentist, you basically run a small business with everything that comes with that, right? It's not just showing up and drilling and filling and taking teeth out. It's like you're managing a team of 25 people, and you're having to manage all of these different things, and you're also now doing your own marketing and all of this stuff that you never learned how to do. Not even in dental school they teach you that stuff. And so you're just kind of picking it up as you go and learning wherever you can. And so there's a lot of stress coming into the dental field as a new dentist, because it's this whole world of stuff that you have no idea about. If you could just sit and focus on, just dentistry, yeah, it's super easy. After a while you get the hang of that, no big deal. But there's a lot of other stuff you're dealing with this looming, $500,000 in debt over you, and you're like, okay, I got to make sure I can pay the bills and, pay all my staff and still have money for me at the end of the month to take home. And so once you kind of get used to that, and, for me, I love the business side of it a lot. I love it. Like dentistry is great. I like helping people, getting people out of pain and doing all that stuff, but I would say equally or if not more, I've kind of pushed more towards enjoying the business aspect of it and seeing, okay, how can we make this a better experience for the patients and like kind of push it away from this stigmatism of like what people think of the dentist is like and what it's like going to the dentist, and how can we change that perception, where I'm currently at, and then also kind of remove some of those stresses and kind of push more on the business side and more management side to where it's not having to worry as much about certain things and taking on more of the other stuff. The benefits of that is like kind of frees up a little bit more of my time. It's a little more flexible of a schedule versus like, regular dentist, I'm there every single day, no matter what. I remember, I was, for years and years, it's like, even if I wasn't feeling good, I'm still going to work. I've got 80 people showing up to my office that day, seeing either me or the orthodontist, and, at least 30 to 40 that I'm personally going to see. And if I don't show up, that means my staff's going to have to call him and say, hey, sorry, he can't come in for whatever reason. We're going to have to schedule you in a few months type of scenario, which sucks, right? Especially for someone that's like dealing with something really crappy and they're like, I need to get this done now. So there's just different aspects and pros and cons of the different sides of it. And I kind of danced all over that question. So
perfectly, like a ballerina. So you mentioned perception of a dentist, like the common perception. What do you think of Steve Martin's portrayal of a dentist?
Oh, it's amazing. I love it.
So
Steve Martin's portrayal in Little Shop of Horrors is fantastic. I love it. I mean, obviously, it plays off of it plays off of people's fears of the dentist and like that perception in a way that's just like fantastic comedy humor, but also rings a little true, right? As a patient, you're like, no, like, I feel that way when I go there. We're like, it's funny. He's like exaggerating it, but like there's truth to it, right? And so that's like, that's what I'm talking about, like people's perception. You're like trying to take that and help them realizing that people are showing up like just scared out of their minds and like not wanting to go through this stuff. We all know that, right? It is what it is. And so it's okay, what can I do, to help soften the blow for this person, knowing that they're going to have to go through all this stuff that no one wants to go through. And pay a ton of money to do it, right? It's like paying a bunch of money to go to Disneyland and wait in line for hours and hours and then get jabbed with a needle.
So on that train of thought, have you ever made any kids cry?
Oh, absolutely. Are we talking about, yes, I've made kids
at work.
I've made kids cry. We're not just talking about my own kids, right?
No.
At work. Yeah, so kids are tricky, right? Because for a kid, they don't entirely have a handle on their emotions. And all this stuff's new to them. So they're going to the dentist, it's like, they don't know what's going on. They don't like going and getting shots in their arms, let alone their mouth, right? Adults don't like getting shots in their mouth. So little kids, all the time. And so really it's more, we use a lot of different things to try to take that anxiety away and try to soften it. And there's a lot of things you can do on an individual level as a doctor to kind of remove that stuff to where they don't even know what's happening. And so we use a lot of that like nasty tasting jelly that they put in their mouth and it numbs up the area. So we use that especially on kids. We'll use nitrous on kids to where they're just laughing, having a good time and not knowing what's going on. And before they know it, you're like, yeah, we're done. They're like, what? What are we doing? But yeah, I mean, you'll get kids, and I get adults the same way. Like it's not, I wouldn't limit it to just kids. Like we have grown adults that cry too, right? And then we'll have grown adults that are like, oh, I was so anxious, so nervous, and they're crying tears of joy because they're like, that was way better than I was like making it out in my mind. But yeah, it's just kind of part of the job. Like you just know it's coming, and you do what you can. It's not that you're heartless, but you you're doing everything you can to make it better, and you're not intentionally doing it to be a prick type of thing.
So you don't have to answer any money questions. I mean, you don't have to answer any questions if you don't want to, but what is the pay like as a dentist?
So the pay as a dentist really depends on your situation, whether you're working, like you own your own private practice, or you're working as an associate for someone else, or you're working for a company. So there's a lot of different things that going on there. But I mean, that can go anywhere from, where if you're like an associate and you're working for someone else right out of school, you could be making, anywhere from like $150,000 up to, almost $1 million a year. Just kind of depends on what, what your situation and what it is you're doing. But I mean, all those people have a lot of the similar student loans, and so a lot of times people use different jobs as stepping stones to get themselves in a better position to then do something that's going to be a little more profitable. And you have people that right off the bat take out massive amounts of loans on top of their student loans to buy a practice, and it doesn't work out, and then they're in a lot more debt. So it's tricky, but yeah, I mean, I would say in general, dentistry is a very stable work environment, which is one of the reasons I did it. My dad, growing up, he was in business, and it was like riding a roller coaster, month to month type of scenario. Whereas dentistry is much less that way. You still have some fluctuation, but it's a pretty stable work environment, which makes it a great job.
So, do you think that dentists are compensated fairly on average?
Yeah, I would say that on average, dentists are compensated fairly. I mean, you have all these different, as patients, we think, oh man, it's so expensive. But at the same time, when you're looking at it from the other side, a lot of those expenses are covering all of the costs of like all the employees, all the materials, like the training, and then also the insurances. So a lot of the fees, that patients pay aren't set by the dentist. They're actually set by insurance companies. I would say the majority of them are. Even if a patient comes into my practice and they want to pay cash, my fees are dictated by insurance companies that I have contracts with. And so taking all that into account, yeah, I think they are. I mean, where jobs where you're making more money, you have more risk as well. And, you have, with more risk, has a higher potential upside.
What are your favorite things about being a dentist?
So my favorite things about being a dentist, I really love talking to people. I love meeting new people and kind of, hearing what their stories are. And I love helping people. People that are in, crappy situations, that have things going on that need something to be fixed. I'm good at coming up with solutions and good at fixing problems. That's kind of how my brain works. I like working with people a lot, and especially within the health field. A lot of that stuff just fascinates me, how the body works and how we're able to help things heal faster or remove things that are causing problems and move forward.
What are some of your least favorite things about being a dentist?
Ooh, least favorite things about being a dentist probably are going to center around kids crying and, the costs of everything and, dealing with patients that that you're talking with them and that there's no way they can possibly afford to get any of the stuff done that they drastically need. And at different times in your career, there's a lot of dentists that they just can't do anything about that. And then there's other times where, people down the road, I'm at a point where it's like, oh, I can help them out because like really there's certain things where it's like, I can just do it for free and not charge them and help them out. And so I typically have like one patient that I'm always working on that's like a pro bono thing just to try to help ease the pain, just in our local community. A lot of people will go do these trips to other parts of the world to do these service trips and work on people in Africa or in wherever, but we have a huge need in our backyard, and so I think the company that I'm with, we do a huge focus on that and give away a lot every year to our own neighborhood. So I like that.
What is the craziest thing that's ever happened to you at work?
Ooh, man, I got a lot of crazy stuff that's happened at work. So I'll give you a few examples of crazy things that have happened to me at work. One of them actually happened when I was in dental school. One of like the first patients I ever saw, this old guy with this big old scraggly beard, and we're getting all ready to do everything, and he's, we ask him, medical questionnaire. No, nothing, no issues, I'm fine. Okay, cool. Let's go to get ready and go to give him an injection, do a shot in his mouth, and all of a sudden he just starts chomping on anything and everything within eyesight like a bulldog, including my hand, the syringe, the glass cartridge, everything. Going crazy. So I just rip it out and like shatter glasses in his mouth all over. And like we just look at each other, my partner and I, we're like, what the hell just happened? And this dude is just freaking out. And I'm like, I yell at him. I'm like, what are you doing? He's like, oh, sorry, man. I didn't realize what was going on. And I was like, wait, what? we started talking to this guy. Turns out he's got any number of mental illnesses that he omitted from telling us, and so. But that was fun. That was a good times, good vibes. Then other times where I was in my office in Arizona, and this guy runs into the waiting room. Waiting room's chock full of people. We got 15 people sitting in there waiting to see our orthodontist and stuff. And a guy comes in and he's like, "Man, someone's robbing a bunch of stuff out of this truck. It's a red truck." And he says that, and like half the people are looking around, and I realize like half the people only speak Spanish, and so I start telling them Spanish. And the guy, my patient I'm talking to, he's like, "That's my truck!" And so I like jump the counter and we run out and chase after this guy. And this guy is carrying like a full-on tire in one hand and a toolbox in the other, running full speed like down the Walmart parking lot. And we like chase after him and like throw the tire down and grab him, and the guy runs off. And then we look at each other, this patient and I, and we just start laughing. We're like, "Dude, that was crazy!" So yeah, I mean, you just deal with a lot of weird stuff.
That's pretty wild. So nobody told you that you could lose fingers as part of the job description.
Yeah, you imagine, right? You figure that's it's up the alley.
So those are some of the crazier things. What is one of the most rewarding things that's ever happened at work?
Yeah, so I would say one of the most rewarding things that's ever happened at work kind of more centers around the people, the patients that just generally have major issues, that have major health needs, and they know it, and they are willing to go through what it takes to get them back to where they're healthy again and just not in pain. And sometimes I would say the most rewarding ones are those scenarios where there's just no possible way that patient is able to get the stuff done they need done. And then, sitting there and talking with my assistant and being like, "Hey, this is one, let's just do this on us. We'll just do it and let's not tell anyone about it, right? We'll just get it all taken care of." And, when they find out and we tell them that, or in a roundabout way, we say, "Hey, don't worry about it, it's on us." And you see them a little bit later and they're completely healthy and they're just crying and hugging you. And it's like, all right, yeah, this is why I did, why I became a dentist and why I do what I do. So it's, you can actually see like a real change and a real effect in people.
So this is a similar but slightly different question. What would you say is your biggest accomplishment at work?
Ooh, my biggest accomplishment at work. Still got 10 fingers. No, I mean, so I've worked with, when I finished school, I started with a brand new dental office that had just opened a little bit before, maybe 6 months before. And I met the founding dentist, got along really well with him. We had similar ideas, similar ideals, and jumped into that first office. And now that company has grown to where there's 26 offices. And so I've been around for the majority of the company and helped that company grow and helped a lot of offices, helped do a lot of training with a lot of doctors in multiple states and different markets. And was the most successful dentist within that company for a long time until I stepped out from full-time dentistry to be more management stuff. And so yeah, I mean, there's been a lot of stuff along the way that's great accomplishments, and just made some really good lifelong friends, and had a great time with my family along the way.
Nice. Now, what's something you wish you could tell your patients that you can't, or can't necessarily tell them to their face?
Ooh, something that I wish I could tell my patients, but I can't necessarily tell it to their face. I don't know, I'm a pretty blunt guy. When things come up, I'm like, I'm not going to sugarcoat this, guys. This is how it is. I mean, I think in general, dentists kind of skirt around a lot of issues. Like if someone has really, really bad breath, like there's something going on, they'll kind of be like, hey, they'll hint at it. But it's kind of a fine line of you don't want to like make someone angry or make someone feel bad about themselves. And so you're trying to figure out, okay, try to come up with a solution for this, but in a way that's going to be like, oh, hey, like I'm taking care of you as a friend, not as like, oh, hey, that's like nasty, or like I want your money type scenario.
Well, that is it as far as questions I have. Is there anything else you would like to say or get off your chest? Any confessions?
Any dashboard confessions here? No, I mean, I'd say that's pretty solid. Nothing too crazy going down. So, call it good there.
Can you do me a favor and can you say, talk to me?
Talk to me.